World War III? These 10 countries are preparing for a massive conflict in 2025. The world stands at a crossroads. Tensions are rising, alliances are shifting, and the sounds of military drums are growing louder. As we enter 2025, the threat of a global conflict, possibly even a third world war, no longer feels like distant fiction, but an emerging reality. From Asia to Europe to the Middle East, countries are ramping up defense budgets, conducting aggressive military drills, and fast-tracking cutting-edge weaponry. But which nations are leading the charge toward confrontation? On the journey of wisdom, we're counting down 10 countries that are actively preparing for a massive conflict in 2025, and what their actions could mean for the rest of the world. Will these moves push us over the edge, or is there still a chance for peace through wisdom and diplomacy? Stick around to find out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay connected with more thought-provoking insights. Number 1. Japan. Once known for its deep-rooted commitment to pacifism, Japan is now undergoing a striking transformation in its defense strategy, signaling a major shift in the post-World War II landscape. In 2024, the Japanese government approved a record-breaking $51 billion defense budget, a bold 26.3% increase from the previous year. This dramatic rise isn't happening in a vacuum. It's a calculated response to increasing regional instability, especially due to China's expanding presence in the East China Sea and North Korea's unrelenting missile provocations. Japan, long considered a nation focused on diplomacy and peace, now finds itself at a crossroads where national security demands new levels of readiness. The move toward a stronger military presence is marked by heavy investments in advanced weaponry, including hypersonic missiles capable of evading traditional defense systems and long-range cruise missiles that can strike with precision far beyond Japanese shores. The purchase of 105 F-35 stealth fighter jets, a highly sophisticated and nearly invisible warplane, further underscores Japan's serious commitment to modern warfare readiness. This acquisition makes Japan the largest foreign operator of these high-tech jets, signaling to both allies and potential adversaries that the nation is no longer sitting quietly in the shadows of global military affairs. Beyond conventional arms, Japan is also stepping up in the digital battlefield by strengthening its cybersecurity infrastructure, acknowledging that future conflicts won't only be fought with bombs and bullets, but also with lines of code and cyber intrusions. In a world where information warfare and digital espionage are just as dangerous as physical attacks, Japan is making it clear that it's not willing to be left vulnerable. One area of escalating tension is around the Sakurajima Islands, where frequent incursions by Chinese Coast Guard vessels into Japanese waters in early 2024 sparked a wave of diplomatic protests. This led to intensified naval patrols and increased joint military drills with the United States, further solidifying Japan's strategic partnerships. As nations build alliances and prepare for unforeseen scenarios, Japan's shift reveals how global trust and cooperation are becoming vital parts of national defense. What's equally significant is the change in public opinion. Just a few years ago, the idea of ramping up military spending would have been met with widespread opposition. But times have changed. A 2024 poll showed that 64% of Japanese citizens now support increased defense spending, a significant rise from only 43% in 2020. This shift in sentiment suggests that people are becoming more aware of the complexities and unpredictability of the modern geopolitical environment. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has openly stressed the importance of proactive defense, recognizing that in an era of rising tensions across the Indo-Pacific, complacency is no longer an option. His message is clear: preparation today may prevent disaster tomorrow. For those of us watching from afar, Japan's transformation offers important reflections on our own sense of safety and readiness. In a world that feels increasingly unstable, from global conflicts to cyber threats that can affect our personal data and infrastructure, it's easy to feel overwhelmed or powerless. But we can draw a meaningful lesson from Japan's approach. Preparing for challenges doesn't mean we're welcoming conflict. It means we're choosing resilience, awareness, and responsibility. Whether it's safeguarding our families, securing our digital lives, or simply staying informed about world affairs, we each play a role in building a more mindful and prepared society. As Japan adjusts its sails in uncertain waters, it reminds us that peace isn't just a wish. It's something we must actively protect, not only through strength, but through unity, wisdom, and conscious action. Number 2, Turkey. Let's talk about a country that's been turning heads lately when it comes to military activity and preparation for possible global conflict. Turkey. As a long-standing NATO member, you might expect Turkey to play by certain international rules. But in 2024, it's made some big moves that show it's also determined to carve out its own path. The Turkish government didn't just tweak its military budget, it skyrocketed it by 150%, now totaling a staggering $28 billion. That's not just a number, it's a signal, a loud one, that Turkey is serious about extending its influence across the Eastern Mediterranean, the Middle East, and even further afield. But why now? What's fueling this rise in military assertiveness, and what does it mean for the rest of us? A big part of Turkey's power push is technological. Their drone industry, led by the now famous Bayraktar TB2 drones, is evolving fast. These drones aren't just flying machines anymore. They're being upgraded with artificial intelligence, which could change how future conflicts are fought. You might have heard about their role in past clashes like Libya and Ukraine. Those weren't isolated events. They were previews of how Turkey sees modern warfare: smart, unmanned, and fast-reaching. Turkish defense companies aren't just building these drones for themselves either. They're selling them, a lot of them. In just the first half of 2024, military exports jumped 32%, with countries in Africa and Eastern Europe lining up to buy. Now, while Turkey is strengthening ties with some regions, it's also facing serious tensions closer to home. The situation with Greece, for instance, has reached a boiling point once again. In March 2024, Turkish fighter jets flew over Greek islands, escalating an already long-standing dispute over territorial waters in the Aegean Sea. It's the kind of move that doesn't just shake regional stability, it puts NATO in a tough spot. Both countries are members, yet the alliance now finds itself having to step in to cool things down. Still, Ankara shows no signs of backing away from these high-stakes displays of power. Meanwhile, on its southern front, Turkey is deeply entangled in Syria. It has reinforced its military positions along the border and launched new operations targeting Kurdish groups it labels as terrorist threats. These actions have drawn sharp criticism from the international community. But President Erdogan remains unmoved. He made it crystal clear: ensuring border security remains a non-negotiable priority. That statement alone reveals a lot about Turkey's stance. It's not just reacting, it's preparing, actively, intentionally, and unapologetically. So, here's the question. What does it really mean when a country like Turkey steps up its military game this way? Is it defending itself or expanding its power? Is it leading or is it provoking? And more importantly, how do these actions shape the fragile balance of peace and power in the world? As we think about Turkey's role in this potential global storm, one thing becomes clear. Preparation for conflict isn't always about immediate war. Sometimes it's about showing strength to influence outcomes before a fight even begins. For us watching, the lesson isn't just geopolitical, it's personal. It reminds us to pay attention, to ask what kind of power we value: the power to dominate or the power to cooperate. In times like these, may we reflect on how peace is not simply the absence of war, but the presence of understanding, restraint, and the courage to seek solutions before tensions explode. Number 3. Iran. Let's take a closer look at Iran, a country that's rapidly stepping up its military game as tensions across the Middle East grow more intense. Imagine waking up to the news that a nation has increased its military budget by 35% in a single year. That's exactly what Iran did in 2024, setting aside a staggering $22 billion specifically for building up its missile programs, expanding its navy, and developing more advanced drones. Why is this significant? Because these moves aren't just about defense. They signal a serious preparation for potential future conflict. So, what does this tell us about where Iran's heading in 2025? At the heart of this military buildup is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC, a powerful force in Iran that goes far beyond just traditional military roles. They're leading the charge in boosting Iran's capabilities, and right now, Iran has the largest missile arsenal in the entire region. Think about that for a moment. The biggest stockpile of missiles in an already unstable part of the world. In July of 2024, they tested the Karshina missile, which can travel up to 450 kilometers, well within range of both Israel and American military bases stationed in the Gulf. Doesn't that make you wonder what message Iran is really trying to send with such tests? But it doesn't stop there. Iran isn't just flexing its muscles within its own borders. It's extending its reach across the Middle East by backing a network of proxy groups. You've probably heard of Hezbollah in Lebanon, Shia militias operating in Iraq, and the Houthis in Yemen. Well, in just 1 year, Iran reportedly provided over 500 drones to these groups. That's not just support, it's a clear signal of strategic coordination. Why do you think Iran is so focused on empowering allies beyond its own borders? Could this be a way to increase influence while avoiding direct confrontation? Let's not overlook the naval front either. In 2024, Iranian warships began patrolling key waterways like the Red Sea and the Strait of Hormuz more aggressively than ever before. And in a move that rattled global shipping routes, an Iranian operation seized a British oil tanker in May. Actions like that don't just make headlines, they shift global dynamics. When one nation starts threatening major international trade routes, how do you think the world should respond? As we reflect on all these developments, one thing becomes clear. Iran isn't just preparing for the possibility of a war, it seems to be positioning itself as a central player in shaping what that conflict might look like. Diplomatic efforts to ease tensions have been struggling, if not failing altogether. So now the big question we need to ask ourselves is, if diplomacy continues to falter and military preparations continue to rise, what does 2025 really hold for Iran and for the world? Are we witnessing the groundwork for a regional confrontation that could spill over into something far bigger? Or is this a high-stakes game of deterrence that no one truly wants to escalate? Understanding Iran's current moves helps us grasp the larger picture of global instability and challenges us to think deeply about where we stand in a world edging closer to conflict. If you've watched up to this point, you're already ahead in understanding the rising global tensions that could shape our world in 2025. Comment below with prepared mind to show you're staying informed and alert. Don't go anywhere, there's still critical information ahead that could help you better understand which countries are positioning themselves for major global shifts. Stay with us to the end. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Number 4. South Korea. South Korea, a nation with a complex and tense history tied closely to its northern neighbor, is rapidly stepping up its defense strategy in 2025 as the geopolitical climate grows increasingly uncertain. Still technically at war with North Korea, since the Korean War ended only with an armistice, not a peace treaty. South Korea has long lived under the looming shadow of conflict. Now, with global tensions rising and whispers of a potential World War III growing louder, Seoul is acting with urgency. In 2024, the government approved a significant increase in its defense budget, reaching $52 billion, an 8% rise compared to the previous year. This budget isn't just about buying weapons. It's a reflection of deep concerns about national survival, regional stability, and the need to protect its people. The focus is on boosting missile defense systems, enhancing surveillance capabilities, and reinforcing its naval strength. A major part of this includes the expansion of THAD, Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, missile systems. A move that stirred not just North Korea, but also raised eyebrows in neighboring China due to its far-reaching radar capability. Adding to these developments, South Korea tested a new interceptor in March 2024 that can potentially neutralize the hypersonic missiles North Korea claims to possess. Missiles that move so fast, traditional defense systems struggle to respond. This kind of military progress isn't just technical, it's psychological. It sends a message: we are ready, and we will not be caught off guard. The Air Force has also been bolstered with the latest generation of F-35A stealth fighter jets, giving South Korea a significant edge in aerial defense and strategic deterrence. But Seoul is not facing this growing threat alone. Its alliance with the United States remains central to its defense strategy. Joint military exercises, like the 2024 Freedom Shield drills, involved a staggering 300,000 troops and focused on large-scale combat simulations that prepare both countries for worst-case scenarios. These are not just routine drills. They reflect a deepening concern about what the future may hold and a shared commitment to defending democratic values in the region. Naturally, these moves haven't gone unnoticed. North Korea has responded in kind, firing missiles and issuing fiery threats of what it calls unimaginable consequences. It's a chilling reminder that peace on the Korean peninsula remains fragile, and that provocations can escalate quickly. In response, South Korea is not just preparing for air and land-based threats, it is also reinforcing its presence at sea. In April 2024, new submarines armed with ballistic missile capabilities were deployed to the Yellow Sea, signaling Seoul's intent to maintain strategic control in nearby waters, especially as concerns grow over both North Korean and Chinese maritime activities. These moves are not simply military gestures. They are part of a larger shift in how South Korea views its role in the Indo-Pacific region, one that demands vigilance, innovation, and unwavering commitment to security. For those of us watching from afar or living peaceful lives in seemingly unaffected countries, it's easy to feel detached from these distant threats. But these events remind us how quickly the world can change and how deeply interconnected we all are. In modern life, being informed is a form of preparation. While we may not be soldiers on the front lines, we can choose to be wise observers who seek understanding over fear. This moment calls for greater empathy, for supporting international dialogue, and for cultivating inner peace in a world that often feels chaotic. South Korea's story isn't just about defense budgets and war games, it's about a people's will to protect what they love. And perhaps, in our own way, we should ask ourselves, what are we doing today to protect peace in our hearts, our communities, and the wider world? Let that question be our compass in these uncertain times. Number 5. India. Let's take a closer look at India, a country not just known for its deep spirituality and vibrant culture, but also one that is rapidly stepping into a more assertive role on the global stage, especially when it comes to defense. You might wonder, why is India investing so heavily in its military right now? In 2024 alone, India's defense budget soared to a striking $73 billion, a 15% leap from the previous year. That number isn't just big, it tells a story of urgency, of preparation, and of rising tensions that can't be ignored. This investment is not about aggression, but about preparation. The focus? Strengthening the backbone of its military, the Air Force, Navy, and cyber capabilities, ensuring that it remains alert and capable on all fronts in a rapidly shifting world. One of the key reasons behind this build-up is the ongoing tension with China along the line of actual control, or LAC. Although it's not widely covered every day, this border region has been a hotspot of unresolved disputes and simmering mistrust for decades. In May 2024, India responded to fresh concerns, sparked by satellite images showing new Chinese constructions near contested zones, by deploying an extra 5,000 troops. Now, think about this. When both sides are building fortifications, what message does that send about the likelihood of peace? What does it mean for the people living near these tense regions? It raises important questions, not just about national security, but about the broader vision of regional stability. But India's focus isn't only on land. Its naval strategy is undergoing a powerful transformation. With growing concern over China's influence in the Indian Ocean, India has started to reshape its maritime presence. 2 new destroyers were added to its fleet, signaling a clear message. India intends to safeguard its waters and assert its role in the region. Under the Quad Alliance, a strategic partnership with the United States, Japan, and Australia, India has intensified joint naval exercises. This isn't just about showing strength, but about building trust and coordination with like-minded nations that value a free and open Indo-Pacific. So, ask yourself, How do alliances shape the future of peace or conflict? And what role does India really want to play in that evolving story? On the home front, India is not just relying on external support or imports. The country is fostering self-reliance in its defense production. Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, a state-run aerospace giant, reported a remarkable 28% rise in production in 2024 alone. That means more aircraft, more equipment and more jobs, turning defense spending into an engine for economic activity. This internal growth reflects a broader national ambition to become not only a military power, but also a hub of innovation and manufacturing. As we look toward 2025, India's military readiness sends a clear signal. It's not about wanting war. India has always valued diplomacy and peace, but it's about being ready if conflict arises. The unresolved border tensions and growing maritime stakes are not just challenges, they're catalysts for transformation. India is preparing, not just with weapons and warships, but with strategy, alliances, and a deeper sense of responsibility on the global stage. So, here's a thought to leave you with. Can true peace exist without preparation? In a world where uncertainty is the only constant, India's journey is a lesson in balance between strength and restraint, defense and diplomacy. And perhaps for all of us, the message is this: being prepared doesn't always mean you're seeking conflict. Sometimes it's simply a commitment to protect what matters most. Number 6. China. In recent years, China has dramatically accelerated its military activities, raising serious concerns across the international community. By 2024, China's defense budget had climbed to a staggering $230 billion, reflecting a 7.6% increase from the previous year. This isn't just a number, it's a signal that Beijing is doubling down on its strategic ambitions to become the dominant force not only in the Indo-Pacific region, but potentially far beyond. At the heart of this build-up is a growing naval force. China has already launched 5 new destroyers and 2 aircraft carriers in a single year, an indication of how rapidly it is modernizing its ability to project power across the seas. As satellite imagery reveals more and more military bases sprouting in the South China Sea, the region is becoming increasingly militarized, with each new installation tightening Beijing's grip on this highly contested area. Taiwan, long a flashpoint in regional tensions, continues to be the center of Beijing's focus. In April 2024, a dramatic escalation occurred when 19 Chinese warplanes entered Taiwan's air defense identification zone in just one day, the largest such incursion ever recorded. This was not a random act, it was a message, a rehearsal, a calculated demonstration of force meant to underline China's stance that it is prepared to achieve reunification with Taiwan by military means if diplomacy fails. These provocations have become routine, yet each one chips away at regional stability, casting a long shadow over the future of peace in Asia. But the battlefield isn't just in the sky or sea. China's cyber operations have surged, revealing a different kind of warfare. Silent, invisible, but equally dangerous. US officials report a staggering 40% increase in cyber attacks originating from China, many of which have targeted key infrastructure in the Pacific. These aren't just data breaches, they are rehearsals for disabling communication systems, power grids, and supply chains. Essential lifelines in any conflict scenario. At the same time, China has been strengthening its alliances, particularly with Russia. The two countries have carried out joint military drills in the Sea of Japan, reinforcing a message of unity against the West and signaling a broader alignment of interests that could reshape global power dynamics. For those of us watching from afar, it's easy to feel distant from these developments, but in truth, they touch us more than we realize. Rising global tensions affect economies, trade, technology, and even our sense of safety. The lesson here isn't just geopolitical, it's personal. We live in a world that's becoming more interconnected and, at the same time, more divided. In such a world, awareness is a form of preparedness. Understanding the motivations behind these military buildups helps us make sense of rising prices, shifting alliances, and sudden disruptions in daily life. More importantly, it reminds us of the value of peace, not as a passive state, but as something we must actively work toward in our homes, our communities, and our governments. We may not hold the levers of power, but we can advocate for transparency, dialogue, and compassion, because while nations prepare for conflict, the people always yearn for peace. And that's a truth that transcends borders. You're still here, which means you truly care about what's happening on the world stage. Comment "Global Aware" if you're ready to face the truth most people choose to ignore. And don't stop now. There's more ahead that could change how you see 2025 and beyond. Keep watching to stay one step ahead. Number 7. United States. You might already know that the US is the world's most powerful military force, but what's unfolding now goes beyond just maintaining that status. The United States isn't just resting on its past victories, it's actively bracing for the future, and the signs are everywhere. In 2024, the defense budget reached an astonishing $842 billion, the highest it's ever been in American history. But this isn't just a number, it tells a bigger story. This massive budget fuels strategic operations around the globe, in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. The largest portion of that funding went to the Indo-Pacific Command, reflecting growing concerns over one key player, China. So, the question is, what are they preparing for? And more importantly, what does that preparation tell us? In May 2024, the US didn't just talk about protecting its interests, it took bold action. Extra forces were deployed to Guam and the Philippines, both crucial spots for countering China's expanding reach. And the moves didn't stop there. Joint military exercises with Japan and Australia have scaled up dramatically. These aren't just drills for show, they're training for real-world scenarios that could unfold in the near future. On the other side of the world, in Europe, cooperation within NATO has reached a level not seen since the Cold War. The US-led efforts in Defender 2024, the largest NATO exercise in decades, designed specifically to simulate a response to potential aggression from Russia. It's as if the United States is building bridges with its allies, not just for support, but for unity in facing common threats. What does this say about the global stage? That it's becoming more unpredictable, more tense, and more interconnected. But war in our time doesn't only take place on the ground or in the air. The battles are now being fought in the digital world too. Cybersecurity has become one of the most crucial defense lines. That's why, in June 2024, the Pentagon rolled out a new aid-based defense network designed to shield its military infrastructure from cyber attacks. This isn't just about computers and data, it's about protecting everything from power grids to satellite systems that keep communication and defense operations alive. Military officials are sounding the alarm. Both China and Russia are not only increasing their capabilities, but they are actively testing America's digital defenses. What would happen if those digital walls were to fall? Could a cyber attack be the first strike in the next global conflict? The bigger picture is clear. The United States is preparing for the possibility of fighting on multiple fronts at once, in different parts of the world and even in cyberspace. This isn't fear-mongering, it's strategic foresight. And it begs the question, how do we, as individuals and as a global society, respond to this rising tide of tension and preparation? Are we moving toward a world that's more cooperative or more divided? At the heart of it all, there's an important takeaway. Preparation is a sign of responsibility, not aggression. But when so many nations prepare for the worst, it reminds us of something deeper, that peace is fragile, and maintaining it requires constant attention, honest dialogue, and mutual respect. So what can we learn from the United States' actions? That strength isn't just about weapons and armies. It's about being ready, being aware, and being willing to protect what matters most. Let this be a moment to reflect. In a world that seems to be preparing for war, how can each of us prepare for peace? Number 8. Ukraine. Imagine this. You're living in a country where nearly 1 out of every $3 is being poured into defense, where drones fill the skies not for show but for survival, and every day people sign up willingly to risk their lives for their homeland. This is the reality for Ukraine as it steps into 2025, not with fear, but with fierce determination. After years of resisting Russian aggression, Ukraine is now at a crucial crossroads, one that may determine not just its future, but the future balance of power in Europe and potentially the world. In 2024 alone, Ukraine dedicated an astounding $48 billion to its military efforts, which is about 30% of its entire GDP. That's not just a number, it's a sign of how deep the conflict runs and how committed the nation is to defending its people and sovereignty. That money isn't just sitting in warehouses, it's fueling a surge in drone production, military recruitment, and artillery replenishment. Over 5,000 drones rolled out of Ukrainian factories in just the first 3 months of the year, a 40% leap from the year before, showing how necessity has accelerated innovation in times of war. But what does this mean for the average person, for you listening right now? Think about this. When a country must divert nearly a third of its economy toward war, what does it sacrifice in education, healthcare, and community development? How long can a nation survive with so much of its focus pointed at conflict rather than peace? And yet, Ukraine presses on, not out of choice, but out of a perceived necessity. The eastern region of Donbass continues to be a battlefield, with Ukrainian forces launching over 200 drone attacks on Russian oil facilities in just 6 months, aiming to hit key logistics hubs. In retaliation, Moscow has rained down airstrikes on major Ukrainian cities, escalating a war that many fear is becoming less about territory and more about ideology and survival. Support from the international community has been both a lifeline and a reminder that Ukraine is not alone. In April 2024, NATO countries pledged another $50 billion in aid, delivering advanced missile systems and armored vehicles to reinforce Ukraine's resistance. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has spoken openly about the stakes, emphasizing that such support is not a luxury, but a lifeline. "We do not ask for your charity, we ask for tools to survive," he said, echoing the desperation and determination that now define the country's war-torn landscape. Domestically, the country's spirit remains unbroken. Recruitment centers have seen a noticeable rise in volunteer numbers, many of whom are young people who grew up watching their country under siege and have now decided to stand up for its future. What does it mean when the youth of a nation step forward, not to flee, but to fight? That speaks to a profound national identity rooted in resilience and sacrifice. As we look ahead to 2025, Ukraine's preparations show no sign of slowing. Their defense industry is growing, their soldiers are more experienced, and their allies are, for now, still standing by their side. But how long can this hold? Are we witnessing the seeds of something far greater, perhaps even a global confrontation brewing just beneath the surface? And if so, what lessons can we, as individuals and as a global society, learn from Ukraine's unyielding fight? Number 9. Russia. Russia remains steadfast in its pursuit of military dominance, even as it faces heavy international sanctions and growing isolation on the global stage. In 2024, its defense spending reached a staggering $16 billion, nearly 7% of its GDP, an unmistakable sign that military objectives are being prioritized over economic stability and social welfare. This shift is not symbolic. Russia's industrial capacity has transitioned into what experts call wartime production, with weapons factories operating non-stop to supply the front lines. The ongoing war in Ukraine continues to be the core of Russia's strategic focus. In early 2024, Russian forces regained momentum by capturing critical positions near the embattled town of Bakhmut, which had been a stalemate for months. These gains weren't just territorial. They served as a message to the world that Russia is not stepping back. Drone attacks on Ukraine's infrastructure have also intensified, targeting energy grids, supply lines, and urban centers, creating a constant state of fear and uncertainty for civilians. But Russia's ambitions aren't limited to Ukraine. In May 2024, the Kremlin unveiled a bold expansion into the Arctic, a region long overlooked by many but rich in natural resources and increasingly accessible due to melting ice caps. New military bases and missile installations were established, signaling a strategic pivot towards securing future energy dominance. This development also represents a global concern, as multiple nations eye the Arctic's untapped wealth. What makes Russia's move particularly alarming is its growing military cooperation with nations like China and Iran. Joint naval exercises in sensitive maritime zones are not just drills. They are clear signs of emerging alliances that challenge Western influence. These joint operations hint at a possible reorganization of global power dynamics, where countries previously on the periphery of each other's interests are now aligning under shared strategic goals. Meanwhile, on the domestic front, Russia is preparing its population for a long-term military stance. In January 2024, the government raised the maximum conscription age to 30, pulling thousands of additional young men into service. This move, along with sweeping changes to conscription policies, reflects a deeper commitment to sustain a prolonged conflict, possibly beyond Ukraine. Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu publicly emphasized the urgency of building a self-reliant defense industry, one that no longer depends on Western technology or supply chains. This desire for military autonomy signals that Russia anticipates further decoupling from the international community and is preparing for a future shaped more by confrontation As we reflect on these developments, it becomes clear that the world is not just witnessing isolated conflicts, but a broader shift in how nations prepare for power struggles. For us, living far from the front lines, these events may seem distant, but their consequences ripple through global markets, energy prices, and even international security policies that affect our daily lives. It's essential to stay informed, not fearful. Instead of sinking into worry, we can use this awareness to become more thoughtful in how we engage with our world. Supporting diplomacy, fostering compassion, and encouraging critical thinking in our communities. The key lesson here is not just that some nations prepare for war, but that we as individuals can prepare our minds and hearts to respond to conflict with clarity, not chaos. In times like these, inner peace becomes an act of resistance against fear, and understanding becomes a tool for resilience. Number 10, Israel. Let's take a closer look at Israel, a country that finds itself constantly on high alert and in a state of heightened readiness due to the tense environment in the Middle East. When you hear about military buildups or increased defense budgets, you might wonder, why is Israel investing so heavily in its defense right now? The answer lies in its surroundings. In 2024 alone, Israel boosted its defense budget by a striking 18%, reaching $27 billion. This isn't just about numbers. It's a reflection of growing fears that a larger conflict could be on the horizon, perhaps even something that could draw in multiple nations. But what exactly is Israel preparing for, and how is it going about this preparation? To begin with, Israel is sharpening its focus on three key areas: missile defense, drone warfare, and cybersecurity. These aren't just buzzwords, they're the front lines of modern conflict. One of the most well-known systems in Israel's defense toolkit is the Iron Dome, a highly effective shield that intercepts incoming rockets. In 2024, the Iron Dome received a powerful upgrade with new interceptors capable of countering hypersonic missiles, those incredibly fast, hard-to-stop weapons that are changing the landscape of warfare. And if that's not futuristic enough, Israel also tested the A4 missile defense system, showing it can take out threats even in space. Think about that for a moment. How many countries in the world can defend against space-based or high-altitude threats? It gives you a sense of just how advanced Israel's defense strategies are becoming. But it's not just about high-tech defense. On the ground and in the air, things are heating up. Tensions along the northern border, especially with Lebanon, have reached alarming levels. In the first half of 2024, Hezbollah launched over 300 rockets from southern Lebanon into Israeli territory. Imagine living with that kind of constant threat. Sirens wailing, people running for cover, and a nation always on edge. In response, Israel has not only struck back with force, but has also reinforced its military positions in the north and ramped up aerial patrols to detect and deter any further attacks. So the question arises, how close are we to seeing a full-scale conflict erupt in this region? And then there's the cyber battlefield, one that's invisible but just as dangerous. In 2024 alone, Israel reported stopping 78 cyber attacks, many of which were traced back to Iranian hackers. Cyber warfare might not make headlines the same way rockets do, but it's quietly becoming one of the most critical threats of our time. Think about what a successful cyber attack could do: cripple infrastructure, leak sensitive data, or even disrupt military operations. To counter this, Israel's Cyber Command has doubled its manpower, signaling just how serious this threat has become. It's not just about preparing for bombs and bullets anymore, it's about protecting the digital walls of the country too. So now, looking at all these layers, missile defense in the sky, drone surveillance, border tensions, and cyber warfare, it's clear that Israel is not simply reacting to threats, it's preparing for the possibility of a larger, more complex conflict in the near future. Could this be a sign of an approaching global conflict? Or is Israel simply ensuring it remains one step ahead in an unpredictable region? What do you think this kind of preparation tells us about the world we're heading into? These are the kinds of questions we need to start asking as we try to understand not just what's happening, but why. Practical tips for those living in countries preparing for war in 2025. In uncertain times, especially when the shadow of potential conflict looms, preparation becomes more than a safety measure. It becomes a quiet act of wisdom. For those living in or near countries that are reportedly preparing for a major conflict in 2025, it's essential to stay alert without falling into fear. The first practical step is to monitor official travel advisories, not just once in a while, but regularly, because the nature of international tensions can shift quickly and quietly. Think of it like tending a fire in the forest. If you see the smoke early, you can leave before the flames arrive. Government websites and embassy pages often update faster than news outlets and offer clear, factual guidance. As the Buddha once said, to understand everything is to forgive everything, and understanding begins with staying informed. Part of that understanding means having an emergency evacuation plan, not out of paranoia, but out of mindfulness. Know where your nearest embassy or consulate is located, and if you need a visa to travel to a safer country, have it ready in advance. Waiting until the last moment can be the difference between peace and chaos. Keep your passport updated, scan important documents and back them up digitally, and make sure you have enough funds accessible for emergencies. Much like the Zen saying goes, when the house is on fire, do not waste time chasing rats. It reminds us to focus on what truly matters in moments of urgency, your life and your loved ones. Equally vital is maintaining a kit of essentials, medication, water, non-perishable food, basic tools, and personal hygiene items. These are not just supplies, they're symbols of self-reliance. Preparing in this way doesn't mean you expect disaster. It means you respect the impermanence of life. Buddha taught, nothing is forever except change. In a world where change can come overnight, especially in geopolitics, being prepared is a form of compassion toward yourself and others. Misinformation in times like these spreads faster than truth, so be cautious about where you get your news. Social media can often amplify fear, while reputable international news agencies are more likely to provide balanced updates. Your peace of mind depends on your sources. As the Dalai Lama once advised, a disciplined mind leads to happiness, and an undisciplined mind leads to suffering. In the fog of potential war, discipline in thought and emotion helps you move with clarity. Finally, blend in and stay neutral. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. In areas of rising tension, avoid public protests, political conversations, or anything that draws unnecessary attention to you. Survival is not about proving a point. It's about choosing peace over pride. Just as Lao Tzu once said, "He who knows when he can fight and when he cannot will be victorious. Sometimes the true victory is knowing when to stay silent, to stay safe, and to stay aware. This advice isn't just for those in conflict zones. It's a reminder for all of us. Modern life is full of unseen tensions, not just between nations, but within families, communities, and even within ourselves. Preparation, both practical and emotional, is a daily practice. When we face uncertainty with awareness, calm, and compassion, we not only protect ourselves, we inspire those around us to do the same. In the words of Thich Nhat Hanh, peace in the world begins with peace in oneself. Let us walk forward, not with fear, but with the strength that comes from mindfulness, preparation, and deep inner clarity. As we've seen, the world in 2025 is not only changing, it's preparing. From Japan to Israel, each nation's choices reflect deeper fears, strategies, and hopes for what comes next. Whether this is the path to World War III or simply a louder call for caution remains to be seen. But amidst all this uncertainty, one truth remains. Preparation is not the opposite of peace. It can be a step toward it, if guided by wisdom, awareness, and compassion. If today's video gave you something to think about, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to the Journey of Wisdom. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you won't miss our upcoming episodes, where we continue exploring the world's biggest questions through the lens of clarity and calm. Until next time, stay informed, stay grounded, and as always, walk gently with wisdom.